The plane touched down at JFK International Airport with a gentle brush of wheels against asphalt. After 15 years serving as the U.S. ambassador in diplomatic missions around the world, I was finally coming home. My last post in Japan had officially ended yesterday. And now, at 58, I was free to return to my life, to my family, to my daughter Jennifer. I adjusted my navy blue suit jacket as I walked through the terminal, still maintaining the poise and elegance that the diplomatic corps demanded. My hair, once chestnut brown and now streaked with silver, was pulled back in an impeccable bun. The years of international negotiations had left their mark on my face, but they had also given me an inner strength that rarely faltered. I hadn't told anyone about my return. I wanted to surprise Jenny, to see that look of amazement on her face, like when she was a child and I brought her an unexpected gift. My only daughter, now 32, had married Brad 7 years ago while I was posted in Brussels. I had met my son-in-law only for a weekend during the wedding, and since then, our interactions had been limited to brief video calls in which he always seemed to be just passing through. The taxi dropped me off in front of an elegant apartment building in Manhattan's Upper East Side, where Jenny and Brad lived. With my diplomatic briefcase in hand, and my heart beating rapidly, I rang the doorbell of apartment 7B. I waited, but there was no answer. I tried again, thinking perhaps they were busy, but only an unsettling silence greeted me. While considering my options, I heard a voice behind me. Looking for the Reed family. I turned to find a woman in her 60s watching me from the neighboring apartment door. Yes, I'm looking for my daughter, Jennifer. I'm Margaret Harrison. The woman's expression changed instantly. A mixture of recognition and something else, compassion. Ambassador Harrison, she said, approaching. Jenny has told us so much about you. I'm Carol, her neighbor. But, don't you know what's happened? My heart stopped for a moment. What's happened? Has something happened to Jennifer? Carol lowered her voice as if sharing a painful secret. Jenny is at New York Presbyterian Hospital. She's been admitted for 3 weeks. Heart problems. Very serious from what I understand. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. 3 weeks? And Brad? Carol's gaze hardened slightly. Brad? Well, I haven't seen much of him around lately. According to his Instagram, he's on a cruise in the Greek islands. Something about business, he said. Business cruise. While my daughter was hospitalized with serious heart problems, the pieces didn't fit, and an alarm began to sound in my head, the same one that alerted me during diplomatic crises. New York Presbyterian, you said? Thank you, Carol. Without losing a second, I left my suitcase with the concierge and took another taxi. During the ride, my mind was a whirlwind of questions. Why hadn't anyone notified me? I regularly sent money to Jenny, especially in the last 2 years when she mentioned she was having some health issues. Nothing serious, Mom, she had assured me. I just need some checkups and special treatments that insurance doesn't fully cover. New York Presbyterian Hospital rose imposingly before me. I entered with a firm step, heading directly to the information desk. I'm looking for Jennifer Reed. I'm her mother. The receptionist consulted her computer. 5th floor, Intensive Cardiac Care Unit. Intensive Cardiac Care. The words hit me hard. I took the elevator, trying to maintain my composure. Years of diplomacy had taught me not to show my emotions in public, but now, that mask was threatening to crack. The 5th floor smelled of antiseptic and that peculiar hospital aroma that had always disturbed me. I walked down the corridor, following the signs to room 58. The door was ajar, and inside I could see a bed surrounded by machines and monitors. And there was Jenny, my vibrant, energetic daughter, now pale and emaciated, connected to tubes and devices that emitted constant beeping. Her dark hair contrasted dramatically with the pallor of her skin and the whiteness of the sheets. Jenny, I whispered from the doorway, unable to contain the emotion in my voice. Her eyes opened slowly, as if it took an enormous effort. When she finally focused on me, a weak smile appeared on her lips. Mom? Is it really you? Her voice was barely a whisper. I quickly moved to her side, taking her cold hand in mine. Yes, sweetheart, it's me. I've come back to stay. Tears began to run down her cheeks. I didn't want you to find out like this. I didn't want to worry you while you were finishing your mission. I gently stroked her hair, as I did when she was little. What happened, Jenny? Why didn't you tell me? Before she could answer, a doctor entered the room. He introduced himself as Dr. Richards, chief cardiologist. Ms. Harrison, a pleasure to meet you. Jennifer has told us a lot about you. Doctor, what's wrong with my daughter? Dr. Richards indicated that I should accompany him outside the room. Once in the hallway, his expression turned grave. Your daughter suffers from severe dilated cardiomyopathy. Her heart is failing, and she needs an urgent transplant. We've put her on the priority list. But what, doctor? Time is crucial. Her condition has deteriorated rapidly in recent weeks. If she had received specialized treatment a year ago, when the first serious symptoms appeared, we could have significantly delayed the progression of the disease. I felt a lump in my throat. A year, but she told me they were just routine checkups. According to her history, the first serious symptoms appeared approximately 14 months ago. She came to the emergency room with difficulty breathing and extreme fatigue. She was recommended a specific treatment and follow-up with specialists, but she only reappeared 3 weeks ago, already in critical condition. My mind tried to process this information. Doctor, I have been regularly sending money for her medical treatments. Dr. Richards looked at me with an expression that mixed compassion with something akin to discomfort. Miss Harrison, I don't want to intrude on family matters, but your daughter was admitted here without private medical insurance, and with difficulties covering the initial costs. Her husband appeared on the first day, signed some papers, and has barely returned since then. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. I understand, doctor. May I stay with her tonight? Of course, I'll speak with the nurses to provide you with everything you need. I returned to Jenny, who seemed to have fallen asleep. I sat beside her, holding her hand, while watching the monitor that marked her vital signs. My daughter was fighting for her life, and I had just discovered that the money I had sent for her treatments apparently had never been used for that purpose. At midnight, Jenny briefly awoke. Her eyes opened and searched for me in the dimness of the room. Mom, I'm sorry, she said weakly. You have nothing to be sorry for, sweetheart. Yes, I should have told you Brad said you would worry too much, that he would take care of everything. Where is Brad now, Jenny? Her eyes filled with tears again. On a business trip, he said. It was important, that he couldn't cancel it. Does he know how serious your situation is? Jenny nodded weakly. I told him I needed the transplant. He said he would return soon, that he had everything under control. I gently squeezed her hand. Rest now, sweetheart. I'll take care of everything. When Jenny fell asleep again, I took out my phone and dialed Brad's number. After several attempts, he finally answered. The sound of music and laughter in the background contrasted painfully with the silence of the hospital room. Maggie? What a surprise, he said in a slightly alarmed tone. I didn't know you had returned to the States. I'm at the hospital with Jenny, I replied in a controlled voice. Years of international negotiations had taught me to maintain calm, even in the most tense situations. Can you explain to me why my daughter urgently needs a heart transplant while you're on a cruise in the Greek islands? There was a momentary silence, interrupted only by the background music. It's a business trip, Maggie. I'm closing an important deal that will help us pay for Jenny's treatments. How curious, because I've been sending money specifically for those treatments for over a year. Another silence. It's complicated, Maggie. The treatments are expensive and we had other financial obligations. More important than my daughter's life? My voice was pure ice. I'll be back in a few days and we'll talk about this in person. No, Brad, you'll return tomorrow, or I'll make sure the authorities find you wherever you are. I hung up without waiting for a response. My hand was trembling, but not from fear, from a cold, calculated fury I hadn't felt in years. The next morning, after making sure Jenny was stable, I headed to the apartment. This time, the doorman recognized me and gave me immediate access. The apartment was impeccably decorated, with designer furniture and artwork I didn't remember from my last visit. I went directly to Brad's office. As a diplomat, I knew exactly what to look for. In less than an hour, I had found bank statements, invoices, and documents that told a very different story from what I had been led to believe. The money I sent monthly, a considerable sum, thanks to my position as ambassador, had been systematically diverted to Brad's personal investments, luxury trips, a yacht, and even an apartment in the Hamptons that I knew nothing about. Meanwhile, Jenny's medical bills were unpaid, and there were collection letters from several specialists. In the bottom drawer of the desk, I found something that took my breath away: a life insurance policy in Jenny's name, with Brad as the sole beneficiary, signed just 6 months ago. My world stopped for a moment. The magnitude of the betrayal was overwhelming. He hadn't just been diverting money intended for Jenny's treatment. He seemed to have been waiting for her death. I took photographs of all the documents with my phone and organized them meticulously. 15 years in the diplomatic service had taught me to document everything with military precision. Then, I made a call I never thought I would have to make. Bob Torres had been my security chief at the Brussels embassy, and now worked in New York for a law firm specializing in fraud cases. "Maggie, what a surprise! Welcome back to the States." "Bob, I need your help urgently. It's a family matter, and a legal one." 3 hours later, Bob was at the apartment reviewing all the documentation I had compiled. "This is a clear case of misappropriation of funds and possible insurance fraud," he finally said. "With your power of attorney as Jenny's mother in these documents, we can request the immediate freezing of all Brad's accounts and assets, especially considering your daughter's critical medical condition." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "And I want to file a formal complaint for abandonment and negligence. My daughter is dying because the money I sent for her treatments was diverted." "We'll need the doctor's statements," Bob pointed out. "You'll have them this very afternoon." That night, as I watched over Jenny's restless sleep, I received a message from Bob. "Court order granted. All accounts frozen. Assets under investigation. He has been notified." Barely a minute later, my phone began to ring, insistently. Brad's name flashed on the screen. I rejected the call. It wasn't the time for confrontations. My priority was Jenny. For the next 3 days, I dedicated myself exclusively to my daughter. I spoke with the doctors, met with the transplant team, and used all my diplomatic contacts to try to expedite the search for a compatible heart. Meanwhile, Brad had returned to New York and was desperately trying to contact me. On the 4th day, I agreed to see him in the hospital cafeteria. He arrived looking disheveled, very different from the polished image he projected on his social media. "What have you done, Maggie?" was the first thing he said, sitting across from me. "I can't access any of my accounts. My cards are blocked." "I've done what I should have done a long time ago. Protect my daughter," I replied calmly. "The money I sent was for Jenny's treatments, not for your yachts and Hamptons apartments." "That's not fair. I've been working hard to—" "Save it, Brad. I have all the documents, all the evidence. I know about the life insurance too." His face visibly paled. "That's not what it seems." "No? And what is it exactly?" "A coincidence that you signed a life insurance policy for Jenny just when her condition was worsening, while you were spending on luxuries the money that should have paid for her treatments?" Brad tried to adopt an indignant expression, but only managed to look cornered. "I can explain everything. You'll have plenty of time to explain it to the judge," I said, standing up. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going back to my daughter." "You can't do this to me," he exclaimed, raising his voice. "I'm her husband. I have rights." I turned to him with the same expression I had used in the tensest negotiations of my career. "Rights? You lost them the moment you decided that your comfort was more important than my daughter's life. Consider this a lesson in diplomacy, Brad. Never underestimate a mother protecting her daughter." As I walked away, I could feel his furious gaze on my back. I didn't care. I had faced dictators and terrorists. A treacherous son-in-law didn't intimidate me at all. That night, Jenny's condition suddenly worsened. Her heart was failing faster than expected. The doctors spoke in urgent whispers as they adjusted medications and monitors. "We need that heart now," said Dr. Richards, not hiding his concern. "We've moved her to the top of the national list, but..." "But what?" I asked, feeling my own heart stop. "Jenny's blood type and build make it difficult to find a compatible donor. We're expanding the search to a national level. But time..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Time was running out. That night, as I held Jenny's hand in the ICU, I made a decision. If diplomacy had taught me anything, it was never to give up and to use all available resources. At dawn, I began making calls. First to my former colleagues in Washington, then to contacts in transplant organizations across the country. I explained the situation, pressed, pleaded when necessary. I had spent 15 years negotiating for my country. Now I was negotiating for my daughter's life. "Maggie, you should rest a bit," a nurse told me on the third day of my vigil. "You're not helping Jenny by exhausting yourself like this." "I can't rest while she's fighting," I replied, without taking my eyes off my daughter. It was then that I noticed the young couple in the room across the hall. She, clearly pregnant, was connected to monitors similar to Jenny's. He never left her side, with an expression of concern that was painfully familiar to me. "Who are they?" I asked the nurse. "The Sullivan family. Sarah is expecting their first child, but her heart is failing due to a pregnancy complication. They're trying to keep her stable until the baby can be safely born." My heart constricted at this new tragedy. In my desperation for Jenny, I had almost forgotten that suffering was not exclusive to my family. But that afternoon, while I was having coffee in the waiting room, Sarah's husband sat down beside me. He introduced himself as Mike. "I heard you're a diplomat," he said, after exchanging a few words. "Is it true that you know people all over the country?" I nodded. "I've served in several embassies for 15 years. Sarah needs an experimental treatment that's only offered in Boston," he explained with a trembling voice. "But our insurance doesn't cover it, and we've exhausted all our savings." I looked at him, feeling an immediate connection with this man who, like me, would do anything to save his loved one. "Give me the details," I said simply. That night, while Jenny slept, I made more calls, this time to my contacts in Boston. The treatment existed and it was promising. With a few more conversations, I managed to get a Boston specialist to agree to review Sarah's case remotely. The days turned into an exhausting routine, watching over Jenny, making calls, pressuring transplant organizations, helping Mike and Sarah when I could, and keeping Brad at bay, who continued trying to regain control of his finances. A week later, I received a call that would change everything. "Margaret Harrison," I answered automatically, half asleep in the uncomfortable chair next to Jenny's bed. "Miss Harrison, this is Dr. Keller from the National Transplant Organization. We have a compatible heart for your daughter. It's in Philadelphia, but we can transfer it to New York in 3 hours." I sat up abruptly, fully awake. Are you sure?" "Completely compatible. We're already coordinating with the team at New York Presbyterian. Prepare Jennifer for immediate surgery." The next hours were a whirlwind of activity. Jenny was prepared for the operation while I signed forms and consents. Before they took her to the operating room, I was able to speak briefly with her. "They're going to give you a new heart, sweetheart," I told her, trying to keep my voice from trembling. "You're going to be fine." Her eyes, sunken and tired, looked at me with a mixture of fear and hope. "What if it doesn't work, Mom?" "It will work," I affirmed with a conviction I didn't know I had. "You're strong, Jenny. Stronger than you think." The operation lasted 7 hours. 7 hours in which I walked the hallways, prayed without being a believer, and prepared myself for all possible scenarios. Mike sat with me part of the time, offering me the same silent support that I had given him. Finally, Dr. Richards appeared, removing his surgical cap. The operation was a success, he announced with a tired smile. The new heart is functioning perfectly. Of course, the next few days will be critical, but the outlook is very good. I collapsed in the chair, the tears I had been holding back for days finally flowing freely. Thank you, doctor. Thank you. While Jenny recovered in the ICU, I divided my time between being by her side and helping Mike and Sarah. The Sullivans' baby was born 2 weeks later, a small but healthy boy they named Ethan. Sarah's condition also stabilized, thanks to the consultation with the Boston specialist. A month after Jenny's transplant, she was well enough to be moved to a regular room. Her improvement was notable each day, and the doctors were optimistic about her complete recovery. It was during this time that Bob informed me that the case against Brad was progressing favorably. The investigation had uncovered more evidence of misappropriation, and he now faced criminal charges. The judge has ruled that all assets acquired with the money you sent must be liquidated to cover Jenny's medical expenses, Bob explained. Furthermore, given the seriousness of the charges, he's likely to receive a prison sentence. I felt no satisfaction hearing this, just a profound weariness. What does he say? He's tried to negotiate, but his position is untenable with all the evidence we have. His lawyer is pushing for a deal that would avoid jail time. Let him pay for what he did, I said simply. I'm not looking for revenge, Bob, just justice. Life in the hospital had shown me a different perspective. Seeing families like the Sullivans, fighting with dignity and unconditional love, had reminded me of what truly mattered. One afternoon, while Jenny was sleeping, Mike entered the room with a devastated expression. He took me to the hallway to talk. There's been an accident, he said, his voice breaking. Sarah and I were returning to the hospital when a truck, she didn't make it. I was left speechless at the magnitude of this tragedy. This man, who had been so strong for months, now seemed completely lost. And the baby? I finally asked. He's in the hospital nursery. He's fine, but I don't know how I'm gonna do this alone, Maggie. We don't have family, it was just Sarah and me. I hugged him instinctively, allowing him to cry on my shoulder. At that moment, I wasn't an ambassador or a fighting mother. I was simply a human being sharing another's pain. The following days were surreal. While Jenny continued improving, I helped Mike with the funeral arrangements for Sarah, and spent hours in the nursery with little Ethan. You should take him home, a nurse told me after seeing me cradle the baby one afternoon. It's obvious you've grown attached to him. It's not that simple, I replied, although the idea had already begun to form in my mind. When Jenny was strong enough to have a serious conversation, I told her everything about Mike, Sarah, and little Ethan. That's horrible, said Jenny, with tears in her eyes. That poor baby. Mike is overwhelmed. He has no family to help him, and he's afraid he won't be able to properly care for Ethan while working. Jenny looked at me for a long time. Mom, are you thinking what I think you're thinking? I don't know, I admitted. It's crazy, right? I've just returned to the States. You're recovering. Bring him, Jenny said, with surprising firmness. Bring Ethan here. I want to meet him. The next day, I brought the baby to Jenny's room. Mike had agreed easily, grateful for any help with his son while dealing with his grief. Seeing Jenny hold Ethan was a moment I will never forget. My daughter, who had been on the brink of death just a few weeks ago, now cradled this baby with an immediate tenderness and connection. He's perfect, she whispered, caressing the tiny cheek of the baby. And he needs a family. Jenny? I'm serious, Mom. I've received a second chance, a new heart. Maybe this is the purpose of all this. 3 months later, Jenny finally received hospital discharge. During that time, our relationship with Mike and Ethan had deepened. We spent hours each day with the baby, and Mike began to depend more and more on our support. It was he who finally raised the question. I can't do it alone, he admitted one afternoon, as we had coffee in the hospital cafeteria. I love Ethan with all my heart, but between work, grief, and the needs of a baby, I'm drowning, Maggie. What are you suggesting, Mike? You've been more family to Ethan in these months than anyone else. I've seen how you look at him, how you care for him. He took a deep breath. I'd like to propose a shared custody arrangement. Legally, I would still be his father, but you would be, well, also his family. The proposal left me speechless. It wasn't what I expected, but somehow, it seemed perfectly natural. I need to discuss it with Jenny, I finally said. That night, Jenny and I had a long conversation in the apartment we had bought near the hospital. Brad's place remained empty. He had accepted a judicial agreement that included financial restitution and probation. It's the right thing, Jenny said simply. Ethan needs us, and we need him. And so, almost without realizing it, our family grew. Mike found an apartment near ours, and we established a routine that worked for everyone. Ethan spent days with us and weekends with his father. It wasn't conventional, but it was genuine and filled with love. A year after Jenny's transplant, we founded the New Heart Foundation, dedicated to helping cardiac patients without resources and supporting families affected by serious illnesses. I used my diplomatic contacts to secure funding and international support, while Jenny, fully recovered, directed the daily programs. As for Brad, he eventually left our lives. The last we heard, he had moved abroad, leaving behind the shame and legal consequences of his actions. Today, 3 years after my return to the United States, I watched Jenny play with Ethan, now an energetic 4-year-old, in the garden of our house in the Connecticut suburbs. Mike is with them, having found a balance between being a father and continuing to honor Sarah's memory. Life has taught us difficult lessons, but it has also shown us that love can flourish in the most unexpected places, and after the most painful betrayals. My heart fills with gratitude every time I see Jenny, healthy and happy, with her new heart beating strongly in her chest. As I used to say in my days of diplomacy, sometimes the most severe crises hide the most beautiful opportunities. You just need to have the courage not to give up, and the wisdom to recognize that endings can also be beginnings. This afternoon, while Jenny and Mike take Ethan to his swimming lesson, I sit on the porch with a cup of tea, reviewing the latest reports from the foundation. In 3 years, we've helped fund treatments for more than 200 cardiac patients and provided support to their families. The phone rings, interrupting my thoughts. It's Bob, who is now part of the foundation's board of directors. Maggie, I have news about the Navarro case, he says without preamble. The Navarro case is what we call a young couple whose situation painfully reminded us of Mike and Sarah. The wife needs an urgent heart transplant, and they have a small daughter. Have they included her on the priority list? I ask, holding my breath. Even better. They've found a compatible donor. The operation is scheduled for tomorrow. A wave of relief washes over me. Thank you for letting me know. I'll go to the hospital tomorrow to be with the family. After hanging up, I gaze out at the garden, where the flowers Jenny planted in spring are in full bloom. I think about the circles of life, how our suffering has allowed us to alleviate that of others. I vaguely remember a diplomatic crisis in Syria, years ago, when a colleague told me I had a gift for transforming catastrophes into opportunities. At that time, I thought he was referring to my ability to negotiate. Now I understand it's about something much deeper, the capacity to find meaning even amid the most intense pain. My mind travels to Brad, and I'm surprised to discover I no longer feel anger. The betrayal remains a fact, but time has diluted the rage, leaving only a sad understanding of how selfishness can destroy lives. According to Bob's latest reports, Brad now lives in Dubai, working for a real estate company. He never tried to contact Jenny after the trial, which in retrospect, was best for everyone. The sound of laughter brings me back to the present. Jenny, Mike, and Ethan have returned earlier than expected. Ethan runs toward me with his hair still damp, proudly holding a diploma from his swimming class. Grandma Maggie, look! I swam by myself, he exclaims, jumping into my arms. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I respond, hugging him tightly. Jenny approaches, radiant. Every time I see her like this, healthy and happy, I feel immense gratitude toward that anonymous donor, who in their darkest moment, gave my daughter a second chance. Mom, we have something to tell you, says Jenny, exchanging a knowing look with Mike. What are you two up to? I ask, recognizing that expression on my daughter's face. Mike smiles, taking Jenny's hand. Their friendship, born in the hospital hallways, has gradually evolved into something deeper over the past year. We've decided to move in together, announces Jenny. The three of us, as an official family. The news fills me with joy. I've watched this love grow slowly, built on foundations of respect, shared understanding, and mutual love for Ethan. That's wonderful, I say sincerely. No one deserves to be happy more than you two. Later, when Ethan is in bed and the adults are having dinner on the terrace under the stars, Jenny brings up an unexpected topic. I received an email from Brad, she says suddenly. Mike and I exchange surprised glances. What did he want? I ask, trying to maintain a neutral tone. To apologize, Jenny replies, thoughtfully turning her wineglass. He says he's been in therapy, that he understands the harm he caused. And what do you think? Mike asks gently. Jenny reflects for a moment before answering. I think I forgave him a long time ago, not for his sake but for mine. Carrying that resentment would only have damaged my new heart. She smiles, touching her chest where a scar remembers her battle. I replied, wishing him well, and closing that chapter definitively. Her maturity impresses me. Jenny was always strong, but these years have transformed her into a woman of extraordinary depth and compassion. I'm proud of you, I tell her, squeezing her hand. I learned from the best, she replies, winking at me. An ambassador who taught me that true diplomacy begins in the heart. The conversation drifts to future plans. The expansion of the foundation, the possibility of Mike and Jenny having more children someday, my plans to write my diplomatic memoirs. When I finally retire to my room, I pause for a moment before the photograph on my nightstand. Jenny in the hospital, holding Ethan for the first time. Her eyes, though tired, shone with new hope. That image perfectly captures the moment when our lives took a new direction. The next morning, I head to New York Presbyterian to accompany the Navarro family during the transplant operation. The building, which I once associated only with fear and anguish, now represents for me a place of hope and new beginnings. In the waiting room, I meet Mrs. Navarro, a young woman with frightened eyes that remind me of Jenny's 3 years ago. Ambassador Harrison, thank you for coming, she says, taking my hands. Your foundation, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us. There's no need to thank me, I reply. Just promise me one thing. When all this is over, when your husband is recovered, celebrate each day as the gift it is. I sit beside her while her husband is prepared for surgery. I tell her about Jenny, about our journey, offering her the only thing she really needs at this moment, the hope that difficult stories can also have happy endings. As I wait with her, I think about the long road traveled since that day when I stepped off the plane at JFK, not knowing that my life was about to change completely. I think about the betrayals that break us, and the unexpected connections that rebuild us, and I understand, with absolute clarity, that although my diplomatic career officially ended 3 years ago, I never really stopped being an ambassador. I simply changed missions. Now I represent hope, second chances, the possibility of transforming pain into purpose. My phone vibrates in my pocket. It's a message from Jenny with a photo of Ethan holding a drawing, 4 figures holding hands under a bright sun. Our family, says the text. I smile, putting the phone away. Yes, our family, not defined by blood or legal papers, but by something much more powerful, the choice to love and care for each other, even, or especially, after the storm. And that, after all, is the true meaning of coming home. Every story carries within it an echo of our shared humanity. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone special. Leave us a comment about what you felt, and subscribe to join us for more soul-reaching stories. because every life tells a story that deserves to be heard. See you next time.